Hello and welcome to SeniorCare's Living Wisely, Aging Well. We discuss topics of interest to people aged 60 and over and also adults with disabilities. Today, my guest is Carrie Johnson. Carrie is the coordinator of SeniorCare's Age and Dementia Friendly initiative. Welcome, Carrie. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to discuss the Age and Dementia Friendly programming at SeniorCare. So, Carrie, what is age and dementia friendly?
Sure, that's a good question. So the age-friendly movement began with the World Health Organization. It's an international movement. It's about a decade old now or more. And the dementia-friendly movement is also a worldwide movement. Started here in the US and spread across the world. And the goal of these movements is really simple. It's basically to seek to assure that people of all ages and abilities can access their communities, can enjoy their communities, and can participate in whatever way that they would like to do so. So it's a pretty straightforward goal. How we do that varies. These are tend to be grassroots, local, community-led initiatives. And so what happens in one community might look really different than what happens in another community. As a whole, what we try to do is look at all aspects of a community and think about how they're serving an aging population or those living with dementia. And so we look at everything from things like transportation and housing to social opportunities, to civic life, to inclusion. And I think the age-friendly and dementia-friendly movement really have a lot of momentum behind them now. About 5 years ago, Massachusetts joined the movement and became the second age-friendly state in the country. So as a state, we're really looking broadly at how we serve older adults and those with dementia. And there are over 200 individual communities who've actually identified that they want to work toward becoming more age and dementia friendly, and many of them in our region.
Now, if a community has not taken on the age and dementia friendly programs, why might they look at that?
For a lot of reasons. First and foremost, we're an aging population globally. People are living longer lives. They're often living healthier lives, but they're certainly living longer lives. And so we're seeing kind of broad demographic changes now that really mean we need to start looking at how our communities serve everyone who lives in them. In the United States, the population of those who are 65 and older is up by 34% in the last decade.
Wow.
And in the next decade, it's going to look to grow even faster. And if you look at kind of segments of the population, the fastest growing population in the next decade will be people who are 80 and over. So that's a big change for us as a society, and our communities really need to change to meet those needs. So those are kind of US numbers. The numbers are mirrored here in Massachusetts, certainly, and definitely in our region. There are communities in our region that are projected to be over 50% older adults by 2030, which isn't that far away.
No, that's not.
So, the time I think is really now. Dementia numbers are similar. Dementia numbers are a little bit harder to get your arms around because it's definitely an underdiagnosed condition, and there's a lot of reasons for that. There's stigma, there's fear, there's a lot of reasons why people aren't getting that diagnosis, but even so, right now we have over 6 million people diagnosed with dementia living in our country, and those numbers are expected to double by 2060. So that's, a huge proportion of people, and that's something to think about as we're living longer lives. The prevalence of dementia is going to increase with those longer lifespans. So definitely those are, the changing populations are just changing what communities need to do and think about for the populations. I think a lot of things jump to mind, housing being one of them. So what does housing look like in our community? Is it accessible, first of all? Is it affordable on a fixed income? And are there ways for people to downsize? So a lot of times people, you have a big house, you raise your family, you want to stay in your community, but there's no option for you to downsize, or there's very limited options for you to downsize as you age. So, we think about that as we think about these kind of broader aging communities. We think about transportation is a really important aspect of community life. And I think as people age, they're more likely to give up driving. So what does that mean for their ability to participate in their community? We had somebody once tell us that they thought of themselves as a half-time citizen because they had stopped driving, and the public transportation in their community only ran until 3 p.m. So anything after that, they had no access to it. So that means, town meetings, they couldn't go to those, they couldn't go to evening events. And so they described themselves, and I thought it was really powerful that they considered themselves only a half-time citizen of their own community. So
That's so sad.
I know. So with age-friendly communities, we're really thinking about those aspects. Social inclusion and participation is a really important aspect of the work that age-friendly communities do. And I also think, we talk a lot about what serves the needs of those who are aging now, right? That's kind of the focus of age and dementia-friendly communities. But I think it's really important to emphasize that we're all aging. And so hopefully changes that we make now for older adults who are living in our communities now are going to benefit you and me and my kids and everyone moving forward as we're all kind of aging in time. And with age and dementia-friendly communities, the other thing I would say about that is that changes we tend to make around age and dementia-friendly initiatives benefit all. So we talk about things like, an example would be the built environment, right? So we see sidewalks, right, that are uneven, maybe they're narrow, maybe people aren't cleaning snow off of them. And so an age-friendly change would be to have sidewalks that have a smooth surface, that are clear of debris, that someone is easily able to navigate, maybe with a caregiver with them. But that change benefits everyone, right? It benefits me or the postal worker or somebody pushing a stroller. And so, the old saying of a rising tide lifts all boats, I think changes we make to make communities more age and dementia friendly are just beneficial to everyone.
So can you tell me what is happening in our area here with the focus of age and dementia-friendly programming?
There is as I said, there's a lot of momentum in Massachusetts around age and dementia-friendly programming. I think of us really as a leader, our state as a leader in terms of aging and what it means to age in place in your community or in the place that you would like to be. There's a lot of age and dementia-friendly work happening on the North Shore. SeniorCare, the one I know most about, is coordinated by SeniorCare and the 4 communities of Cape Ann, so Manchester, Essex, Rockport, and Gloucester, called Age and Dementia Friendly Cape Ann. And we have worked in a variety of ways in our community. So we work with planning boards and boards of health, our councils on aging and senior centers. We've worked with high schools around various aspects of how we can better meet the needs of older adults, how we can better include older adults. We provide a lot of educational opportunities, particularly around dementia. Again, we've done that in high schools, which has been really exciting. We've done it with libraries, with councils on aging. And so we work some of it we do regionally with all 4 communities, and sometimes it's 1 or 2 communities have identified a need that may be unique to their needs, and so we try to help with whatever the focus may be. And there's a lot of other dementia and age-friendly work that's happening across the region. Topsfield has been a real leader in the dementia-friendly movement. They've done a lot of work, like with the Topsfield Fair, and they've just done some really interesting things. Hamilton and Wenham have started the age and dementia-friendly process. Beverly's done a community assessment around aging. So there's a lot of kind of forward movement in our community.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, education about dementia is an important part of the dementia-friendly programming. Can you tell me about education programs that are going on around?
Yes. A lot of us have personal experience with dementia. So I talked about kind of how prevalent it is. And that means a lot of us have family or friends, or we've worked with people, or, serving the public, we've run into people who have dementia. And even with how prevalent it is, it's not something that we talk about a tremendous amount. There's so much fear around it. There's a lot of stigma. People with dementia often see their loved ones kind of pulling away from them a little bit. So what we're trying to do with our dementia education is provide both basic information but also work toward destigmatizing the condition. And so it's kind of twofold. We want to really begin a conversation and make people comfortable around the thought of dementia, talking about dementia. One of the things that we've done a lot of is we've worked with the Dementia Friends Massachusetts network. They provide training for 1-hour sessions on dementia, kind of bite-sized information that people can use to maybe interact with somebody in their life who has dementia, but make those interactions more positive. It's a program that runs across the state. At SeniorCare, we've trained quite a few people now to provide these Dementia Friends education sessions. And during those sessions, we look at memory changes that happen with dementia, but also with normal aging. There's a lot of kind of questions and fear around that. Is this normal? Is what I'm experiencing dementia? Is it coming? So we talk a little bit about that. We talk a lot about what is dementia? So people often use dementia and Alzheimer's as interchangeable words, and they're different. Dementia is really the umbrella term, and Alzheimer's causes dementia, but there are other causes as well. So we talk about that. We talk about the symptoms related to dementia. Communication strategies is a big piece of the education process. So how can you make these interactions with somebody living with the disease more positive? And then we also talk about how people living with dementia are more than their disease. Sometimes I think we just kind of compartmentalize folks and we're like, this person has dementia and I have an idea about what that is. But they're still individuals, they're still themselves, and they can still lead a really great life, really have a good quality of life, and that emotional piece is often the piece that really remains as people begin to lose their memory. And so we do some education around that and what that means for your interactions and with somebody who's living with the disease.
Cool. So if I was interested in hosting a Dementia Friends session, do I need to, could I just invite a bunch of friends over to my house, or do I need to be part of a company and invite you to a company or an organization? How does that work?
All of the above. So we've done Dementia Friends sessions in a variety of ways. Sometimes people do hold them just for friends or family. So maybe they have a loved one who has dementia and they're feeling like all of the family could do better. We need more information. And so, sometimes people do hold them for small groups like that. We have and continue to hold sessions for the public. We try to partner with various organizations in the community so that to get the word out to more people. And so we've held them, as I've mentioned, in libraries. We've held them in councils on aging. Rockport High School hosted them for some students, which was great, and they really engaged with the topic. And we've also worked with businesses who want to provide training to their staff because they're maybe they're working with the public, they're seeing that come into their stores or museums or whatever the case may be, and they want to be better educated on how to serve their customers. The City of Gloucester recently we worked with them to provide a Dementia Friends session for all of their public-facing employees. So all public-facing employees now they're armed with that knowledge, right? That will help them in their jobs, definitely. More often than not, I also hear about how important it is for them personally to get that information because so many of us have loved ones who are living with dementia. So I would encourage anyone who's interested in hosting a Dementia Friends session or providing that information to staff or family or wants to offer it to the public to reach out to SeniorCare and we can talk about getting one scheduled.
Great. Okay. I hear that you received a grant that is going to let you expand on your age and dementia friendly programming. What's that all about?
So one other thing, I had mentioned that a lot of us have these age and dementia friendly programming that it's really centered within our own communities, which is how it should be. Gloucester's needs look different than Boston's needs, look different than Rockport's needs. And so they have to be individualized programs, but we're all moving in the same direction. And so what we felt like in our region was we could do better collaborating with each other to make sure that, maybe we can take best practices from each other. We can enhance each other's work. Maybe sometimes we'll work together on projects that make sense for us to work together on. But the problem was everyone doing these programs is usually stretched pretty thin. And it's in addition to something else that they do. They've kind of taken it on as a passion that they would like to see this change happen, but maybe don't have the additional time. And so we applied for a grant through the Point 32 Health Foundation and are able through that to have someone coordinate some of that work, and so that we can begin to come together as a region and think about how we're addressing aging and dementia and what we can do better together.
Oh, cool. So not everybody has to reinvent the wheel.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
So tell me how age and dementia-friendly programming might impact caregivers of people who are living with dementia, because caregiving is a huge impact. It completely changes a person's life when you become a caregiver of a person who's aging or has dementia.
Absolutely. And it's a really common experience. I think it's often not something that we talk about. It's just, I'm taking care of mom, or I'm taking care of my husband, or whatever the case may be. So it's a common experience, but it's one we don't talk about. We don't share the stress involved with caregiving, and that is very real for people. And it's 1 in 5 Americans identify as a caregiver, right? So that's a lot. Of those, there's 48 million who are caring for an adult. So in our country alone, there's 48 million people caring for an adult, and 25% of those are caring for someone with dementia.
Wow.
So it's significant. It's happening. It's in our community, and it's stressful. It's often isolating as somebody's providing care for somebody else. Your world begins to shrink a little bit because your time shrinks. You have a big time commitment now, and it can be a tiring experience. There's often not a lot of time and energy for caregivers to kind of put to their own needs. So that's something at SeniorCare that we've been thinking a little bit about, is how we're serving caregivers in our community as well as older adults.
So with that thought, what kind of programming has SeniorCare developed for caregivers?
We have had some long-standing programming that's statewide. In our region, we have a caregiver support program through SeniorCare that has a caregiver specialist who works one-on-one with caregivers around whatever needs they might have. So it can be things like, I need resources in the home, I need a little help. She can help navigate those processes. It can be, I need somebody to listen to me, I'm really stressed and I don't have someone to talk to about this. So that's a really kind of open-ended, meet people where they are type of program. There's caregiver support groups that meet. So they meet in person a couple times a month. They meet virtually weekly to kind of bring caregivers together and grow some support in that way. And then we recently received a grant called the Assisting Care Partners to Thrive, or ACT program, is a lot easier to get your mouth around. And through that program, it was through the Office of Health and Human Services, the Massachusetts Office of Health and Human Services. And the goal of it is to really provide some opportunity for caregivers to come together, to reduce stress, to build community is a big piece of that, and to ease some of those caregiving burdens. And so we're doing that through really fun events. So we're, going to the North Shore Music Theater, or having lunch out, or going on guided walks at an Essex County Greenbelt property, and just having an opportunity for caregivers to come together to build that community, so to grow that social network that's so important. It really is, social connection is a huge part of mental and physical health. And so we think about that. It's an opportunity for caregivers and care recipients to do something fun together. So instead of their interactions being focused on care, right, on I'm doing something for you, it's we're going to go out to see a show together, or we're going to have lunch together. And we both get to step out of these roles that we're in and just take a breath. And so that's really been the focus of this program. We're in the beginning of it. We have a survey up. If people go to SeniorCare's website and they're a caregiver, they can complete a survey to just let us know, what would you like to do as a caregiver? What would feel beneficial to you? We've had conversations with caregivers where they've talked about, one person I was talking to said, I I was taking care of my mom, and it was really stressful. And one day, somebody gave me a gift card to Market Basket, and it just felt so good. They said, "Here, this is for you. I know, you've been doing a lot lately. This is for you." And she's like, it seemed so small, but it was so big. And this was 10 years later, she was telling me this story. So it had stuck with her that someone was like, "Caregiver, I see you and your needs, and here's something small for you."
Cool.
So that's kind of been in the back of my head as we think about this program.
So obviously a person, if I lived with my parents and I was caring for them 24/7, obviously that's a caregiver. But the term caregiver is much broader than that, isn't it?
Yes. And I think the term caregiver is difficult for people too. Even if somebody's living with somebody or has, maybe mom has come to live with me and I'm taking care of her, they often don't identify as caregivers. And I think it's because I'm not a caregiver, I'm her daughter, or I'm her wife, or a son, or a daughter, or a friend. And so I might be doing these tasks for this person, but I don't think of it as a caregiver. I just think of it as what I would do for the person that I love, or for my friend. And there is not strict eligibility criteria for these caregiver programs, and that's something I always try to emphasize for people. It's really open-ended, so you might be a family member or a friend or a neighbor. It's not necessarily a family member caregiver. Caregivers sometimes are long distance, right? So you may live here but be taking care of somebody who lives in California, doing phone check-ins, coordinating care. It's not necessarily hands-on, right? So you don't necessarily have to be like physically caring for somebody. You might be scheduling their doctor's appointments, making sure they have groceries in the house, all of those pieces that keep life running. And we think about it in terms of like, sometimes people feel like, oh, I don't do it every day, so I'm not a caregiver. But sometimes it's less frequent. Sometimes it's a check-in a couple times a week. All of those are important caregiving tasks, and I think all are reasons to seek out the caregiver help, especially as it tends to progress to more intensive care with time. And so to build those resources now are important because then you're prepared down the road.
So we're going to wrap up pretty quickly. Why do you think programs like all of these different programs are important?
Well, I think it's sometimes we have these segments of our population who are kind of existing, but we're not thinking about them. And so I think it's important to think about those who are aging, maybe those who are more isolated, although those aren't mutually exclusive, maybe those who are caregivers, who are forgetting to take care of themselves in the process of taking care of others. In all of these situations, it's important to think about the self-care aspect for our lives. So, and in many cases, especially with caregivers, it's not a luxury, it's a necessity, right? That they care for themselves, that they keep themselves emotionally healthy, physically healthy. And so I think all of, the age and dementia friendly programming, the caregiver programming allows us to stop and think about these segments of our population who are important parts of our communities and how we're making sure that nobody's getting left behind.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today, Carrie.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for watching Living Wisely, Aging Well. To learn more about how SeniorCare might be able to provide services to you or to your family, please give us a call at 978-281-1750 and ask to speak with an information and referral specialist, and they can give you so much information you'll be amazed. You can also visit us online at seniorcareinc.org or follow us on Facebook. Have a great day. Thanks so much.